Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Vice President, North America Communications, Darren Wallace.
Well, good evening. It is so great to be here and welcome everyone here to the Advocacy Forum. So, you might be wondering, what's up with the name change? It's true, this has been Ag Issues Forum for over a decade now, and Bayer has sponsored it for that long. What hasn't changed is the fact that we're going to chew on some really important and meaty issues in our industry, and we're so pleased that you could come. I look out on this audience and I see a lot of familiar faces, and I see some folks that I need to meet as well, so I really look forward to the opportunity later this evening. But again, thank you so much for coming. What you're doing is really important, and we couldn't be more pleased that you're spending time with us. So I talked about the name change earlier, and I think it's more than just cosmetic. I think that it signals that there is a change going on in our industry, that we are not only just understanding issues and talking about them, but we're embracing them. And we're dialoguing with new people more than ever before, new groups, and connecting with them in a very important and profound way. And each of you plays a role in that. In short, I think we're all advocating. Because we know that if the conversation just stays here in this room, we're simply talking to ourselves. And we know that that conversation has to move beyond these four walls. We know that the world is increasingly more urban than ever before, that people are more disconnected from their food and how it's produced, but at the same time, they are passionately interested in where their food comes from and how it's produced. So there's this interesting dichotomy going on. So in short, the conversation has to get bigger, and all of us play an important role in that. So it's in that spirit that we're going to encourage you to share your thoughts. So tonight, we have the hashtag advocate. We hope you use it tonight and throughout the conference. Please follow us on Twitter at Bayer4CropsUS and on Instagram. We'll be having the conversation there as well, and we hope you'll join us. We're also live streaming this event at advocacyforum.com. Please spread the word to people that aren't here with us in the NOLA. And let's keep the conversation going over the next couple days. So part of my job in welcoming you all here is a little bit of housekeeping, right? So in fine Bayer safety tradition, let's go through a couple housekeeping points. So restrooms are simply if you exit and go to the right. If there is an emergency during our time here, there'll be staff at the back of the room that will help get you out of the building. Please use the escalators, not the elevators, the escalators, and go outside and listen to first responders or staff. From a medical perspective, please find someone if you have an issue from Bayer, and we'll be happy to help you out while you're here. And importantly, we're all in here. You guys have brought a lot of gear. Be careful of slips, trips, and falls. So we've got cords, we've got laptops, we've got pipe and drape all over the place, so please watch yourself. A little bit more housekeeping. After our keynote tonight, which I'm very much looking forward to, we'll go up to the 8th floor where we'll be happy to host you for some food, some drinks, some hospitality. This is your opportunity as well as journalists to have interviews with folks from Bayer and people that you're interested in. So we really look forward to hosting you and continuing this dialogue that we're starting tonight. We also will have some interview breaks tomorrow during the program. There's an hour-and-a-half interview break, and there'll also be a break at the end of the program as well. So be thinking about those meaty questions you want to chew on and the folks that you want to talk to, and we hope that you really take advantage of those interview times. Tomorrow morning, because we all know the industry we work in is a bright and early industry, breakfast starts, it says in your program at 6:30. We actually know you better than that, so the doors will be open at 6 a.m. Please consult the program, and that's where breakfast will be located. we promised some strong NOLA coffee just for everybody. So, all right, so with that, I am so pleased to introduce a face that is very familiar and has become almost a fixture of this program. Frank Sesno is an award-winning journalist and is now the director at George Washington University's School of Public Affairs. He has become an avid and robust part of this program, and I hope that you will welcome him here tonight as he kicks off this program. So please welcome Frank to the stage with a warm round of applause. Frank.
Thank you very much, Darren, and hi, everybody. How many were here last year? See, isn't that great? You're all back. I'm changing my name in keeping with the tradition here, but you can still call me Frank. It's so good to see so many of you again, and I am really, really happy to be back this year. Very much looking forward to the conversations that we'll be having this year and the questions from you all, which really will be very much planted and focused on the future. Guiding the discussion about dynamic changes in the food system taking place in policy, public discourse, and ultimately agriculture's role to respond and position us for the future, as I mentioned, really is going to be the focus of a lot of the discussion that you're going to be hearing, and it's very exciting. Our collective challenge, of course, is to feed a growing population, a global population that'll be 9 billion people by 2050. And everybody here, those of you who are in the business, who are writing the stories, who are interviewing folks, meeting with the growers and others, you know what that's all about and what's involved. So do the panelists, and your insights and their expertise will make this a super valuable event, rich with thought-provoking dialogue and questions and interviews, I hope. And I'd like to thank all of you for journeying here. Some of you I know drove through the night to get here, so hats off. A couple of housekeeping items of my own. We're doing housekeeping here. It's a good thing. As you know, we have Wi-Fi set up for the event. The network that you'll see is Sheraton Meeting Rooms. If you're prompted for a password, it's Advocacy 2016 with a capital A and a capital V because it's case sensitive, and I'm sure we all have 27 passwords now. Some want special characters, some don't. Drives you crazy, but this is easy. And it should make all of it easier for you to engage online over the course of the program. At the start of last year's event here, I had a great opportunity to sit and spend some time and chat with the CEO of Bayer Crop Science, Jim Bloom. This year, Jim's not here, but through the magic of digital recording, he wanted to share his gratitude for the gathering through media, and he has prepared some remarks that he shares via video message. So here it is.
Hello, I'm Jim Bloom, President and CEO of Bayer Crop Science LP. Welcome to the 2016 Advocacy Forum. I'm sorry my schedule will not allow me to be there with you this year, but I'm glad I have the opportunity to set the stage for this year's event via video. It's an understatement, but these are certainly exciting and dynamic times in agriculture. As an industry, we all know that limited arable land, changing weather, increasing weed, pest, and disease pressure are what farmers battle in the fields day in and day out. These pressures are compounded by the demands we as people put on agriculture. Population growth, changing diets in the world put new demands on the backs of growers as well. These challenges are not new and are ever present. But as a consumer myself and someone who has worked in ag all my life, what I think is interesting is how dialogue around food and ag has changed, particularly with how people view food and their relationship with food, where it's produced and how, and their understanding of agriculture. You all see it and live it every day, so do we. And with only 2% of the U.S. population producing food for the other 98%, there's an increasing responsibility for those of us in food and ag to do a better job of listening, learning, and leading the conversation. That's what this forum has always been about for more than a decade, and why it's more relevant and more important today than ever. For this reason, we changed the name from Ag Issues Forum to the Advocacy Forum. It reflects the growing importance for those of us who work in food and agriculture to listen, learn, connect, and advocate for the work we all do. Over the next day, you'll have the opportunity to hear from experts. I hope you'll also spend time to talk with our team at Bayer and hear how we connect into many of these topics as well. At Bayer, we can see how important it is for farmers, professionals, media, food connectors, and innovators to speak up and share our united passion for what we do day in and day out. So in that way, we are all advocates. On behalf of the people of Bayer, I want to thank you for attending this important forum and for your time. I hope you take something away and look forward to advocating alongside each of you. Thank you.
The sting. Thank you very much. So a couple things that he mentioned that I think are very good points of departure for us as we start to think about the conversations ahead and the next day of conversations. One, certainly the 2%. It's 2% who are growing the foods and have their hands in and on and around the ground, which leaves 98% who do not. And certainly I know from teaching and being with young people all the time, great questions that come up and controversy, some of it informed, some of it not so informed, about the food we eat, what's in it and what's not in it. So we'll engage that. Another thing Jim mentioned was the messaging around it and how the dialogue around agriculture has changed. And we've talked about that in years past. So much of the discussion revolves around supposition, allegation, accusation, and so much of it could be better informed, shall we say, like a lot of the discussion in this country these days. And that's what you do. And that's why you're important, and that's why journalism matters, and it's why I'm delighted to be here. And speaking of delighted to be here, let me shift the conversation now to our keynoter. And I am beyond thrilled to introduce her, because she and I were at a place called CNN when it was referred to as Chicken Noodle News in the early days, before there was controversy about either chicken or noodles, but we were Chicken Noodle News. And Carolyn never was. She was always an unbelievable, professional, creative, important person who knew what people cared about, which was food and nutrition. And it's what she's gone on to do with her remarkable career, to bring together consumer and culinary trends, to look at their impact on food consumption and production, and to bring her special background. She is a food and nutrition journalist. She is a cookbook author. She is a former CNN colleague and reporter and show host on The Menu. Carolyn was always on The Menu. And she is author of some really cool things like this: the Slim Down South Cookbook, Eating Well and Living Healthy in the Land of Biscuits and Bacon. I especially like the bacon part. So we're going to invite Carolyn up here. She's going to present to you. I'll come back and have a few minutes of conversation with her. I know that you will be interested, fascinated by what she has to offer. What a great way to start. Ladies and gentlemen, Carolyn O'Neill.
Yes, put that accessory on the coffee table. It is so wonderful to be with you. I can't wait to meet everybody. I've already had the joy of meeting a couple of you and already seen the name tags from many different places in our country. And I am proud to tell you, I have been to all 50 states. Not on purpose. We had a saying at CNN allows you to go places you'd never want to go. I have been to Bemidji. I have been everywhere. But you know what I've discovered when I arrived? You know, Paris, London, Rome can't even hold a candle to some of the wonderful towns and communities across America, many of them farming communities. And so when I was at CNN, I certainly did get away from my desk and got out of the supermarket, and everyone joked that I was always outstanding in my field. And it was a cornfield or a soy field, but that is where the stories are. So let's get started. You know, the title of this is What's on America's Plate? And I have breaking news for you. Plates are out and bowls are in. So it really should be what's in America's bowl. You know, the smoothie bowl, the noodle bowl. And, you know, Dr. Margaret Riley is presenting tomorrow. She's at UMass Amherst, and I don't know if she's aware of this, but Margaret and the dining services there, which is one of the best in the country at a university level, they are actually transitioning to bowls. Yeah. So I just thought I would, and you're wondering, like, MSRDN, Master Sommelier, is not what the MS means, the Master, I wish it did. A registered dietitian nutritionist. If you haven't seen RDN, just when we got everybody to understand what an RD is, now we're RDNs, registered dietitian nutritionist, and LDN just means I'm licensed. So let's get started here. I just want to tell you, my driving force from the beginning day when I walked into CNN and was told I had a couple of days maybe to prepare a story a day and a half-hour show every week, I just knew that I wasn't going to run out of stories. First I thought, well, it's nutrition news. I guess I could start with the vitamins, move on to the minerals. Well, then I could do fat, I could do protein, I could do cholesterol. What am I going to do the rest of the month? But every day, for nearly 18 years, we put a story on the air that had to do with food. And thank goodness, food is more than something to eat. It's health, it's taste, it's art, it's science, it's politics, it's certainly business, it's sports. There's connections to everything in our lives. And that is why we never ran out of things to talk about when it came to the topic of food. And I do want to share with you, I was just on a trip with some other journalists, and it was a travel journalist, because I do a little travel writing now too. Why not? Like to see food customs and cuisines around the world. Anyway, this travel journalist turned to me and she said, you ready for this? So you report on food, you write about food. Isn't that limiting? I was like, oh my, no. But then I realized something. We're excited about food, we're excited about agriculture, but maybe not everybody is. And it absolutely floored me to think that that wouldn't be everybody's priority, to listen to what I had to say about food. So again, there's the first lesson in journalism. You gotta make them interested in listening to what we're talking about. So let's get started. Okay, so this is food from my view. This all represents my opinions, and if you don't like maybe one of my opinions, then it's not from me. But here we go. There's a cow selfie. Now, how many of you have taken a cow selfie? All right, who doesn't look good next to a cow? Maybe a coyote. And there I am outstanding in my field, and this happens to be an orchard in Sacramento, outside of Sacramento, California, with almond growers, where, of course, I was going to learn about their challenges and technology of dealing with a very water-intensive crop, let's face it, almonds, but in a very drought-intensive situation, as you know, in the past several years. So what were they doing to change their practices and still deliver the almonds that we know are so nutritious and delicious? So again, just gets me excited. I mean, to just go and, I think one of the first times I went to a farm, actually it was one of the first stories I ever did on CNN. I went to do a story on chicken farms. There's a lot of them in Georgia. I thought, well, let's do a story on chicken feed. Why not? Well, there wasn't like a guy in overalls and throwing the chicken feed around to his like chickens. It was, a 6-story glass building with a helicopter pad and, lots of very smart people, including a PhD in poultry science. And that's when I realized, wow, this is as specific as you can get. This is awesome. People know what they're doing and they care about what they're doing. And I went to Iowa, because remember the other white meat, of course, when that campaign was introduced, I went, of course, to do a story. I went to Des Moines, and of course, went to a pork farm, a pig farm, hog farm. Today was Pig Day or something, right? And Hog Day? I saw that in the Twitter thing. Awesome. Perfect story. So anyway, of course, I'm dressed in my little CNN outfit, do stand up, meet the farmers and everything. Anyway, we get there. I pull up with the photographer and the sound man and, a little small crew, a little CNN crew, a little $1.98 production that we had. And we open the car doors, to get out, and beautiful farmhouse, gorgeous flowers, the whole thing. They were sitting out back, had some lemonade for us. We went up the car doors, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is that smell? Like, shut the door. And of course, it was a little pungent there. And they came out and they said, honey, that just smells like money to us. And that is what I said, wow, I tell you what I do feel most of all. I felt pride and excitement they were showing us around. Now, it wasn't a bit of a hurry, and I had to run back into Des Moines and meet some folks for dinner. And I went into the restaurant, not realizing that I still kind of was a little pungent from my pig farm visit. But what the heck, it was Iowa. So, memories. CNN. And as I said, we did a story a day on food, and it was absolutely fantastic, a great team of people. And our library of video became so specific as like, you want a red-haired girl eating a popsicle, or you need, this. We had every kind of food imaginable that ended up in our food library of video. So we were putting stories together. Incredible, fun event, and a big team of terrific people who cared about food, nutrition, and cuisine. And many times our ratings for On the Menu were as high as Larry King. People do care about food. All right, let's take a step back into history, shall we? My first job was at X34 News, which was the CBS affiliate for the West Palm Beaches. I know you're wondering what color those blazers were. They were orange, double knit blazers. The crest, get to know us, were X34. People didn't know if we were selling a spot remover or we were a news team. But I had the opportunity there to start doing farm reporting because I did the early morning news, and I learned things about the open pan evaporation rate, the heat stress index. Pretty proud about that, because of course this was Lake Okeechobee, and all of the cattle, the Florida cattlemen were there, and of course we had the citrus industry and all that stuff. So again, that's when I really realized how big of a deal it is for communities and of certainly the world. Okay, so this is what I do. I write and I talk about food. Okay, and I write for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I have a weekly column I'm doing for 8 years now. It's called Healthy Eating Out. I don't write about recipes at home. I write about healthy eating out. But that doesn't mean I'm always at a fancy restaurant, because when you think about it, eating out today, that's people living off the land. That's people in airports, people in convenience stores, people in cafeterias, people in the schools and business. Everywhere they're living off the land. And I write about, of course, all kinds of consumer trends, but it has to do with really contemporary nutrition. Here I have a little clip. This is when I'm on NBC in Atlanta, and I got a lot of competition. They have celebrities on the show, so I've got to get dressed up. I just can't be the nutrition girl that shows up and, makes an apple pie. I got to dress up like Supergirl every once in a while. Because this was a segment on superfoods. And they said, Carolyn, superfoods are so hot, it's really clickable. You've got to do something on superfoods. I said, oh yeah, I'm going to do a segment on superfoods. So what I did was foods that you didn't know were super. And so we did things like onions. Who knew that, all the wonderful, nutritious, humble heroes that we have? Greek yogurt, popcorn. It's a whole grain, folks. It's a superfood. And so we had all these different foods that people love, and I explained that they're super for a variety of reasons. They're affordable, they're accessible, they taste good, they're nutritious. It wasn't like some berry that they found on the floor, of the Amazon rainforest, or a little, you know what I'm saying? They're things that people could actually afford and actually have and feel good about. So. I did wear another costume for a few years, too, as the lady of the refrigerator on Alton Brown's Good Eats. I don't know, have any of you seen me in my bad blue prom gown? Yeah, how about that, huh? We'll do anything to teach nutrition. One time Alton, and I still live on in reruns, I'm really happy to say, I had a bad blue prom gown on, essentially a tiara, and I am inside the fridge. Like Lady of the Lake in the Arthurian legend, I rise out of the refrigerator and espouse wisdoms on nutrition as Alton opens up the refrigerator. But he doesn't stop there. There was a show on pumpkins. He put me in a giant pumpkin that I had to jump. Most people you jump out of a birthday cake? I had to jump out of a pumpkin. All kinds of crazy stuff. I was in a barrel once with the villagers. We were doing a thing on brining. And so rather than me being in the refrigerator, I was hurtled back into time before refrigeration to explain how brining was one of the original, food preservation. So teaching with, I did one on how to eat like a French girl recently on the show. And of course, I wore a stupid chef's hat that I bought when I was in Paris. This is how dumb it is. Ready for this? It's a chef's hat, and it says Paris. I said to the guy at the souvenir shop, am I the only one to buy this today? He goes, yeah, pretty much. But you got to get the message across somehow. Anyway, food is certainly more than just something to eat. All right, so I think before we can talk to people about food and nutrition, you really have to see what's already on their minds, what's on their plates, and when we teach about nutrition or do a report on food and agriculture, what's already in people's minds? And Frank kind of referenced that too, to what are people already sort of worried about today. And these were the two big messages, I think, during my career so far. Lovely, what you eat can kill you, okay? And then what you eat can cure you. You know, the red wine, the oat bran, so good for you. And then I love how the market responds. The oat bran donuts, the oat bran potato chips, the oat bran beer, you know. And wow. And St. John's wort was in the news for a while as something that would, you know, help with depression, you know, be with sort of your mood, your mental your health a bit there. And then I saw St. John's wort potato chips. I thought, well, that's nothing new. Potato chips have always cured depression. So again, just keeping your eye on the marketplace, it's fascinating. But really, people have in their minds, right, nutrition. How about this? Nutrition is, people say, oh, it's that long list of all the foods you're not supposed to eat. No taste, no salt, no fat, no fun. Thank you, you know. It's like being a minister in a bar. Great being a dietitian, you know. A little killjoy. But then we entered this new age of nutrition discovery where, you know, all these nutrients can make you smarter and stronger and individual things. You know, blueberries improve your memory, right? There's other foods too. I don't remember what they are right now, but it's interesting when there's all these foods. I'm eating this because it's going to do this for me. True. So anyway, this is really what is in people's minds. So that always fascinates me. And this now, it's like fear of offending ingredients, and we're going to get to that. So anyway, one of the big news stories in nutrition, of course, was the release of the 2015 U.S. Dietary Guidelines. You all remember that day. Wasn't it exciting? And, you know, it was 500 pages. And teams of experts worked on this thing, combing through pages and pages of all kinds of research, you know, to boil it all down for what we know now to the best of our knowledge. And you do know that sustainability was not included in the dietary guidelines yet because they just said they just weren't ready. They weren't ready to make recommendations based on the information they had at the time. But anyway, so here I was on NBC there in Atlanta, and you know, you get like, what, 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes or whatever, just to kind of explain a 500-page document. My favorite task, boiling it down. And guess what I did boil it down? I boiled down those 500 pages that told us what to eat, all these nutritious, delicious things to add to your plate, and then limit your sugar, remember, limit the salts, and then, you know, limit the saturated fat to an extent. So I said, you know what, all you gotta remember is this, a little bit of naughty and a lot of nice. The U.S. Dietary Guidelines, congratulations. Which is sort of the theme of the Slim Down South cookbook, eating well and living healthy in the land of biscuits and bacon. A little bit of naughty, a lot of nice. So, you know, moderation, people say, well, Carolyn, it's so easy. It's moderation, it's moderation. Like, that is the most boring word I have ever heard in my life, right? No one wants to listen to that. So the last book I wrote, which called, and I'm sure you all have it, The Dish on Eating Healthy and Being Fabulous, we had a chapter on moderation, and it was called The Dish on Cheating, because I knew people would read that. And it was how to cheat on your diet. You know, how do I eat the chocolate? How I do have a cocktail? It's about meal patterns. So again, The Dish on Cheating. And there's information on how to cheat, too, in the dietary guidelines. Other big headlines that I've been on was, of course, listeria in the news, you know, with the unfortunate deaths and then discovery in ice cream production, food fraud, you know, everything from watered down honey to fish substitution. For some reason, too, take a note of this, the consumers have an endless fascination with expiration dates. You know, they're like, oh, use by dates, sell by dates, best if used by. And it is like, every time I do a piece on this, it's like, people love this. They're still confused. But again, it's a big topic because it's really, you know, some of those dates actually are maybe a little too conservative. You could probably still eat it. You know, I have friends who like don't even look at them at all, but you know, God bless, they got strong stomachs. But it's about food waste too. You know, is it just a quality thing that maybe the crackers aren't quite as crispy, but they're certainly fine for you. So anyway, it's interesting how consumers just love talking about expiration dates. So regardless of what your topic is, just open with that and you got it, okay? Now here is where the dietary guidelines created a bit of a whiplash effect, I would say, and with eggs and cholesterol. Cholesterol content, for the first time we're telling folks, hey, oh, remember that thing we said about eggs? Don't worry about it. You can eat them because actually the dietary cholesterol does not really raise your blood cholesterol. And so shrimp, that's okay, eggs, that's good, you know. And there was just a new report that came out again just this past week in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, a 20-year study they did in Finland. And this is even people who have a carrier gene, which is APOE3, which gives them an increased risk for heart disease even more. And they found there that even egg a day didn't have an impact on their heart disease in the long run. And eggs, here's another thing. This is just a dietitian thing. Whenever I see somebody getting an egg white omelet, I'm like, oh, bless your heart. Bless your heart. You are just trying, aren't you? But the yolk is where the choline is. Oh, thank you. Laughing. It's where the choline is, and it's good for our brains and other nutrients too. You're like, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, literally. So anyway, again, people need this. The more you know, the more you can eat. People need this information. Okay, I'm as shocked about this as you are. Saturated fats, coming back a little bit. We do still have to limit it, and the Heart Association limits it more than dietary guidelines. There's wars going on, in the nutrition world too. But essentially, okay, you ready for this? This is going to get a little sort of geeky for a second. All right, saturated fats. Those are the ones, that are solid at room temperature. They're certainly in dairy products. They're in like palm kernel oil and tropical oils. But I saw a presentation recently as a researcher from the University of Reading over in the UK. Very interesting, because butter, which of course is just the fat, right? It will raise your LDL cholesterol. So again, that's why you have to use a little bit of naughty, not a lot of it. But if the saturated fat is in cream, there's phospholipids in the cream, which actually act as an emulsifier, so it's less of an impact on the bad cholesterol, the LDL. And in cheese, there's calcium, and other dairy too, but the calcium, usually in the form of a salt, this is where it gets real geeky, then will combine with the fat and become kind of a soap. Sound delicious? But the thing is, it has less of an impact on our blood cholesterol. So this is why it's not easy to say. It's like you tell people, it'd be like, oh, well, let me explain. But Julia Child said it best. She said years ago, if you're afraid of butter, use cream. And now it's true. Okay. We also have this happening. Again, results in the marketplace. Full-fat yogurt, a full-fat Greek yogurt. So they're delicious, nutritious, satisfying, good for you. And then, of course, the healthy fats. Here's the poor little avocado. I said you're the good kind of fat. And people are confused about healthy fats, too, because I think when the whole olive oil thing came out, when it was like, this food can cure you, and people were pouring olive oil all over everything, going, oh, my gosh, am I thin yet, And again, so we have to get the message across about total calories. But again, full on for full fat. People, this back and forth stuff, like, 1 minute coffee is going to raise your blood pressure. The next minute there's a study that says caffeine is good for your sex drive. It's like, what's a latte lover to do? And consumers just say, don't tell me what's new, because I don't believe you. Tell me what's true. What is true, please? And that's what I try to get to it. And so we want to start with the science, right? We want to start with the science and explain to them why, this, that, and the other thing, But I think leading with the science, you're going to lose with the science. It's important. And I will tell you one thing, as a beat reporter, and you know about agriculture and food, you're reporting on that, I don't think there's can you imagine a sports reporter who didn't know who won the World Series last year or in 1946 or whatever, or a business reporter who didn't know the difference between, a small cap and a large cap? I mean, they say oh no, you could be a food reporter because you eat. I go, no, it's really good to have some background. In my case, in nutrition, in food science, so that when you're interviewing folks, you know what to ask, not to start at the beginning. Okay, what's new? And also, I think that is very helpful, not for me to talk about real sciencey stuff as a journalist, but to know how to better translate it, to understand it. Therefore, you can translate it into lingo that can be digested more quickly. This is where we are today. I think that sometimes with science, especially with the flip-flop that they see in nutrition, or they imagine it to be in nutrition, it's just, it's a continuum of research. And again, it just leads to, remember, a little bit of naughty and a lot of nice. Okay, that's nutrition. You get a degree. Consumer belief is so strong, and you know this, and you do these word cloud things, look, it's like bigger than entomography. I don't even know what that is. Of course it's bigger. But anyway, it's just so fascinating to see what we have to be, we're sort of up against, All right, trust me, I'm a scientist. And people just don't like the lab coat look anymore. I remember at CNN, whenever we'd interview somebody, we'd put them against the books, like that book nook look. It can look really smart with a lot of books behind you, And then the lab coat, and everything. And but now, often when you see people who are scientists that are being interviewed, they'll have them sort of in this we would say the natural setting, like if they're talking about nutrition, they're in the supermarket, or maybe they're actually sitting at a dining room table, they're in the kitchen, or a scientist who's studying a certain thing with animal welfare or crop protection. They're there with the stuff, they're with the animals, they're with the crops. And we're getting them out of the lab. And again, is that sort of spinning, and the images are so powerful? Yes, but you know what? This is until Hollywood to the rescue. Science is the hero, right? In The Martian. And it's a botanist is the hero. And the movie is about solving problems, finding solutions, things keep going wrong, and he just gets back to, you know what, the science. And so I was just so excited when I saw this. And my friends in the potato world loved it too. Because this, I think, is one of the messages that everybody is getting, is caution, 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 the caution tape wrapped around the food. And that ever popular, what you eat will kill you. And so many times, the headline is so wrong. We want to blame the writers. Often it's the editor that does, if it's in a print thing or even online, that very misinterpretation and misleading headline. Very briefly, I'm going to tell you about a study that I remember that stood out in my career, because the headline all across the country was, hot dogs cause brain cancer in children. Of course, we had to do the story. I got the researcher on the phone. He was out in Los Angeles and interviewed, of course, like a pediatric oncologist at Emory to get his point of view and everything. Guess what? You ready for this? So I got the researcher on the phone. We were interviewing him, the satellite daily. And I said, so tell me about your study. He goes, well, it really wasn't a diet study to begin with. We were actually studying the high voltage power lines. You know what I mean? And people who live near high voltage power lines. Well, guess what? Not too many rich people live near high voltage power lines. These were all low-income families. And so they decided at the last minute to sort of just do a roundup of what were they eating. Well, they happened to be eating a lot of hot dogs. Guess what? They were low income. It was affordable in their grocery dollar. And I said, well, wait a minute. So you think it was the hot dogs then, really? He goes, well, could have been the buns, could have been the relish, could have been the mustard. I said, you're kidding me. It was a study that was so misinterpreted, and millions of parents worried that they're going to feed their child a hot dog and they're going to get brain cancer. It had nothing to do with that. That makes me angry. Now, what makes me laugh, there are foods that certainly have this caution tape wrapped around them all the time. Spam, all right. Now, I remember the product came out with Spam Light. It was 25%, less salt and fat, which still didn't really get it into the supermodel category. But I was in Hawaii, and I was doing a story on the native Hawaiians and their high rates of obesity and diabetes, hypertension. Then we looked at what they were eating. The researchers were in, they ate a lot of Spam. And I wanted to get some statistics, because it's sort of like a luau in a can in Hawaii. It's very popular. It's a part of their diet. And so I had it in the story, and the lawyers at CNN called me because Hormel had called and said, we really don't want our product associated with, death and dying in Hawaii. And it was a little statistic on how much Hawaiians ate, and it was all kinds of other foods too. And the lawyer said, Carolyn, where did you get this information about how much Spam was being consumed in Hawaii? And I'm like, from Hormel's marketing department? Okay, you're good. But again, that's just an example too of, wasn't necessarily that brand, because there's Armor Treat too, we had equal opportunity, but that just was reporting. So wow, yeah, the food beat can be pretty just as pretty dangerous. I was chased by an alligator once in Louisiana. We were doing a story at LSU on alligator meat, first nutritional analysis of alligator meat. Of course, we had to get video of the alligators, and out he came from the pond, and Marla Marks, a photographer, grabbed that $70,000 camera, ran to the truck. So, yeah, it can be a dangerous beat too, who knew? All right, then some foods get a health halo. Blueberries, oatmeal, olive oil, nuts, Greek yogurt. These foods can do no wrong. You put a blueberry, you can put a speck of a blueberry in a giant snack cake, and all of a sudden becomes a health food. And there are problems, because some oatmeal have too much sugar. Olive oil, as we said, you can have too much of it. Nuts, we said a handful, not a canful. And of course, Greek yogurt is, I did see some snack cakes recently that were now made with Greek yogurt. And the lettering on the package was like Greek lettering. It was really creative. So again, you can put this health halo on products that maybe don't necessarily deserve it. All right, let's dig to some food trends. First, what's the difference between a trend and a fad? Well, trend lasts longer. That's about it. Okay. Here's where we are, and this is serious stuff here, okay? Very serious stuff. The no zone. No preservatives, no hormones, no antibiotics, no gluten, no GMO, no next bad thing. We are in the no zone right now. It's clickbait, these negative nutrition headlines, headlines with negative superlatives such as, and you've seen these things, never eat these 5 foods, or the worst 5 things to do, or avoid this, or don't do this. They apparently actually perform 30% better than those with a positive adjective like best, always, greatest, and this is from Outbrain. It is a free from free-for-all out there. It really is. And this happens to be from Food Technology, Elizabeth Sloan. And the reason I have the slide up here, just 73%, 65, 60, these numbers morph. It just depends how you ask the question, right? I mean, if you ask somebody, hey, do you want really healthy, nutritious, good-tasting foods? Okay, 100%. Again, so I'm not saying this is good research, but again, I'm always wary of reporting statistics like this because I'm like, how was for instance, with the no antibiotics, you mean no antibiotics used in the raising of the food at all? Or, or no antibiotics residue left? It's very, very specific, and consumers want to know these things too. All right, here's a fun thing. This is a restaurant in Arizona, and it's great. It's got something for everybody in the no zone. We've got gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free, corn-free, egg-free. We've got nut-free. We've got vegetarian. We've got vegan. We've got raw, and we have got paleo. It's gluten-free, soy-free, peanut-free, nonsense-free. That is amazing. You know what? There's some backlash in the restaurant world too, because this is actually, I saw this on a menu in Beverly Hills, and it said at the bottom, because people say, I don't want salt, I don't want ginger, I don't want this, I don't want olive oil, and then they get their food, they're like, this is terrible. Well, that's how you ordered it. So they had a thing on the menu that said no refunds on your special diet request. So we're getting a little pushback here. What's interesting? I went to a big travel conference, Virtuoso Travel, like 5,000 travel advisors, and there was a great panel on the different generations. And one of the folks who actually specialized in millennial travel for millennials, said they really want to go to places with economic and social unrest, like Cuba or Myanmar or Bhutan, but they wanted gluten-free foods. So apparently this 15 minutes isn't for me. No? Okay. All right, so just to wrap up, dueling trends. Plant-based one day, paleo the next. Gluten-free one day, new artisanal bakery the next. Low-fat one day, return to butter the next. Plant-based foods, part-time vegetarians. International Year of the Pulses. Got seaweed, not exactly a superfood, but super hot. Trending arc of kale. Where did kale become so trendy? It started way back in 1996, and now we're all the way to Chick-fil-A adding kale slaw. Still snack crazy. We're snacking like crazy, but snacks could be an opportunity to add good nutrition to different times of the day with fruits and vegetables and protein. Protein is super hot. With benefit driven for our muscles. Timing of protein, very important. You got to eat it all throughout the day, not just one big steak. And protein needs of individuals is changing. Older people need more protein than we thought. Sugar, obviously it's in honey and it's in agave. They're all the same, it's all sugar. And the microbiome. The microbiome is something that is absolutely the total geekiest thing that we have going on right now. And that is inside of us with all the bacteria. We're more bacterial than we are human. Did you know that? And we want to increase our bacteria, our good bacteria. That's a shot of the mucosal lining of the stomach, and that is actually the intestinal tract, and it is super healthy because there's a lot of mucose, and that's because you're eating fermented foods like yogurt, prebiotics, probiotics, or fruits and vegetables again. So where do we go from here? So in wrapping up, I wanted to share a few things that I'm hopeful because I think people are really focused on food and nutrition. I'm hopeful because farms are really getting the message out with all of the blogs, with the information. The farmer is sort of the new celebrity, and I think that's fantastic. And I think that I'm hopeful in that regard that people do want to learn more about where their food comes from, so that's good. That's a point where we can begin. And it's meal patterns, not single nutrients. Healthy eating is so many definitions. That cake actually shows healthy portion control, maybe actually pretty healthy. And then the radishes, there's so many different ways you can talk about healthy eating with people. And just to tell you, my worst nutrition advice that I hear, shop the perimeter of the store. That's where the bakery and the beer is, okay? Ancient grains, wheat is an ancient grain the last time I checked. Avoid processed food. This has always been dumbed down. Avoid eating out. No, don't tell people not to eat out. Tell them they need driver's education. They need diner's education. By local, I say localize and recognize producers who are doing a great job. They may not be the one down the block. They could be 500 miles away, 5,000 miles away. Localize and recognize. Processed foods, again, something that people are very, they should know cheese is processed, wine is processed. What we're telling people is you just want things that don't have too much salt, too much fat, too much sugar. And I think farm to table. I think this is a great thing where people are going, agritourism, people are going to the farm. But did you know a lot of people, of course, haven't been to a farm. And do you know like a certain percentage of people don't even have a table? Like 3% of people don't have a table. The TV tray is coming back. The agri-hood. Here comes the agri-hood. People are not just getting a beach house. They want to live near a farm, okay? This is suburban, right outside of Atlanta. It's called Serenbe. And you can live in an agri-hood and be very hip. See, it's cool. People want to live on the farm. They love the idea of it. And this is where we want to find a point of connection. This is the good stuff, where people perhaps have fears, and we have information. How do we meet folks in the middle? And it's like people say, Carolyn, what's better, wild fish or farm fish? And I say, well, it's like carrots or cucumbers. Depends on the farmer. And then they're like, wait, you mean there's some good farm fish? I go, yeah, it's about best practices. The conversation begins. Eddie Cole couldn't understand why his business was so bad. May have been the name of his place. So the big win is taste and health and happiness. And I'm not just being Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm here. I really do mean happiness. He's happy, right? Because happiness is affordable, accessible, convenient, sustainable, eco-friendly, animal welfare being concerned, feeling good about eating. That's the happiness. People want taste, health, and they want happiness. And this is where y'all come into play by making people feel good about what they eat, by giving them the information. So the more you know, the more you can eat. And this really, really is a great line. I came up with the CNN cafeteria. My tray was piled high with food. And people say, Carolyn, oh my gosh, how can you eat that much? I go, well, the more you know, the more you can eat. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time. It's going to be a fantastic conference. And thank you for letting me talk about what's on America's plate. And I look forward to your interviews and questions. And Frank, look forward to talking to you right now. Thank you so much.
This is yours, I think.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. I'm going to pick up the Slim Down South cookbook here because who knows? I think that what you have just ranged over is utterly fascinating, and it's especially fascinating because you have had such a remarkable career as both a nutritionist and as a journalist. So you both know the story from the inside out, as we saw from your stomach lining there, and you've been telling the story. What's changed the most, and what powers it? So I'm listening to your presentation, I'm thinking, so is this driven by health? Is it driven by suspicion? Is it driven by sort of what we were talking about earlier, the sort of nichification of this? I want to be about vegetables, I want to be about honey, I want to be about kale. What do you see as sort of the big trends in driving this food story?
Well, we do hear a lot of people talking about FUD, or fear, uncertainty, and distrust. And again, I think we can turn that into fun so people can get back to enjoying what they're eating without looking at their plate as a minefield of all of these things that could potentially harm their health today or 20 years from now. And it's very interesting, I think, with the genetically engineered foods. It's probably one of the most difficult conversations to have with folks because you have to include the science. You have to talk about the science. And finding that sweet spot to talk about benefits. I think people want to know, end of the day, whether they're buying a car or a carrot, what's in it for me. And with the genetically engineered crops, I found that, and maybe y'all have found this too, when you talk about the benefits, drought resistance, or vitamin A, in the golden rice, preventing blindness in children. I think with it, that's what I try to find. I try to find the benefits to the person to get
Does that resonate when you tell that story, or does that still run into this deep suspicion that people have about things that they think are processed, even though the wine they enjoy is also processed, as you pointed out?
Yeah, and like fresh. People say, don't you want fresh? Well, I said, I don't want any fresh wine. I do like it aged a little bit. And I think that there's so many supercharged words. I mean, there really are some supercharged words, aren't there? I mean, you know, even when you say innovation, people are like, oh, I don't know. Technology, I don't, you know, when it comes to food, right? They want the technology in their phones, and even in medicine. I mean, would you rather have a surgery with a hatchet or a laser? I think I'm going with a laser. And that's what I explain to people. It's like, well, that's genetic engineering. We're just going, we don't want unintended consequences. We're just going with the little laser, one particular trait that can be improved.
I'm curious if I could ask the audience, the journalists here, how many of you, when you're writing or putting your stories together, are finding that most of the time there's a health reference if you're writing for consumers, some kind of health or nutrition? How many of you find that you make science references frequently in your stories? All right. How about economic references in the stories? Cost, benefit, that kind of thing. So what are I mean, that's an interesting mix, and I want to talk to people as we break out, but what are these signals that resonate most with your audience? Since you're in nutrition, I would assume it's health, is that right? But you're also talking about fun.
You know, it just, again, it depends on what somebody's outcome, what they want. When you talk to seniors, like, you know, senior adults, they're obviously concerned about health. When you talk to college-age women, they're concerned about beauty, not so much health. You know, they want to be attractive and thin and whatever, and have their hair, you know, the hair shiny and their eyes sparkly in their skin. You know, the real reason for nutrition. And so it depends on the audience, and it depends what, you know. And you know what's exciting is, like, you know, how about New Orleans? My gosh, this is food town.
Food town.
I went to a restaurant last night with Dickie Brennan. You know, it was better than going with the mayor. Let me tell you, he is the mayor of food around here. And he ordered this dish. It was crawfish with a bunch of vegetables and rice that was this gorgeous popcorn rice, you know, that was super fragrant. And I thought, here I am in New Orleans, and I'm eating this beautiful, healthy meal, so we can't give them a bad rap.
What do you see as a consumer's relationship with farmers? Because you talked about your selfie with the cow. I thought that was particularly appealing, by the way. Do they have a relationship with farmers? Is it a knowledgeable, positive relationship?
Well, I think they.
How many of you write about farmers? Okay, lots of hands.
Well, I'm going to start. You know, of course, farmers markets are that's where you one-on-one. But let me just share this with you. A friend of mine who's smart, went to college a little bit and everything. She says, well, you know, Carolyn, 95% of the food that we eat is grown on factory farms. And so first you feel kind of defensive, right? And you want to go like, wow, you're wrong. I said, wait a minute. I said, Jennifer, what do you mean by factory, farm? Can you tell me what you mean? She goes, you know, big, like a big farm. And I go, oh, okay, all right. So, you know, big farms actually can have efficiencies of scale, and they can, if it's an animal production, they can have their own full-time veterinarian or two. And she goes, oh, I never thought of it that way.
Had she ever been to a farm?
Yes, probably, but I guess. Yeah, you know what I mean? But it was that whole big is bad thing. And so rather than me saying, no, it's not, it was like explaining that, and I said, she goes, well, I want family farms. I go, well, most of those big farms are family farms. They're multi-generation. She goes, well, I don't want a corporate farm. I go, well, are you incorporated? I know you write books and stuff. She goes, well, I am incorporated. I go, well, they're incorporated too for the same reasons. It's taxes. Oh, I never thought of it that way. So it's interesting just
to make people
questions.
Understand and to make them think of it differently. So did you make her think differently by the time you were done with her?
Yeah, and then I sent her the videos from the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers Alliance that are really good on these farm tours. So I go like, hey, you can take 4 farm tours here.
Talk about this labeling and what we want on labels and what we don't want on labels and where that's going and how you deal with that in your work.
Some labels are absolutely fantastic, I think.
Like?
I mean, I love looking at the nutrition facts label and saying, oh, here, look how much protein's in here and that kind of a thing. But when we get into the no zone, hey, did you notice that, I don't think MSG was on there. Chick-fil-A right now is wrestling with whether or not to take MSG, you know, monosodium glutamate, out of their formulations so that they can say no MSG. And they ended the day with their panels of experts and nutrition people and everything, they decided, well, people they're not even concerned, their customers weren't even concerned about MSG anymore. They moved on to something else. You know what I mean? So it's like, whatever the next bad thing is, MSG, and now it's just sort of like people just, no big deal. But I think this GMO labeling thing, you know, and today there was a move in the Senate Agriculture Committee to move closer to having a federal uniform standard rather than a state-by-state thing, which obviously but you know, with the GMO label, this is again my personal opinion, it is like telling people to worry about something that they probably don't need to worry about. So what's the point?
So when you take on the labeling story, or when you think of the labeling story, what is that story? What is the narrative to that? Too much information, too little information? We're just suspicious
meats,
about everything?
Right.
So,
With meats, we know there's a definition for natural. There's actually a definition for when that's on a package, but it's not in other sectors. So again, it's I look at labeling in different countries too and see what they're doing, and it's information on a package.
and how about this? So then in this business about processed food and fresh and nutrition and all of that, how do we inform people when there's so much bad information out there and so much?
There's also so
such
much
a lack
good
of it.
information. There's so much good
All right,
information out there. It's
all right.
incredible.
So put your arm around that and tell us how to do that.
Somebody was saying something about, well, there's no information about the dietary guidelines or how consumers are confused. I go, have you gone to myplate.gov lately? There's like a team of experts that worked on meal plans, recipes, shopping lists. You can print out a placemat. I mean, it is, for the kids and teenagers and everything. So again, I think a lot of times we talk about consumer confusion, we talk about lack of information, but it's shining the light on where we can find the good information. And in terms of being an advocate for agriculture, I think that the various sectors of agriculture have really stepped up to the plate with information. That word transparency, which again, it's one of those words I just don't like. I prefer stewardship, which is one of the panels tomorrow, to sustainable. It just seems like you're taking care of something. And yeah, so there's a lot of good information.
Who, as far as the public is concerned, when you're doing your journalism, when you're writing your books, who are the most effective and credible advocates for agriculture? Is it the farmers themselves?
Well, I don't think there's a substitute for, like the people who know the most about a topic or the people it's their topic,
Who do you go to? Mm-hmm. Who do you go to?
For like what question? Throw me a question, I'll tell you.
Well, who do you go to for, healthful food? Is GMO bad? Any of these things?
Well, I like to talk to the people who actually work in that business to get a better understanding exactly what's going on. Remember Steve Martin, he always said, I love to criticize things I don't know about.
Exactly.
So
That's exactly
I like to
right,
know about
right?
it. I've been to Monsanto, I think 3 times. Bear Crop Science was all over the website. It was wonderful just to read all these things and see the videos, listen to the voices. And we did a story at CNN. We usually have round up the usual suspects. It would be like you'd get the university person, you'd get someone from an industry, then you'd have a consumer advocate, and then you'd have consumers, and kind of get the full picture.
Carolyn, you've tracked so much over such a period of time. I'm wondering if you could sort of look forward into the future and a little crystal ball here. Where do you think the future trends in food and nutrition and agriculture are going?
Well, I'm going to say something. I was at the Pennington Biomedical Research Center, which is in Baton Rouge, just last week. I'm on the Presidential Task Force for the Boy Scouts of America, Task Force for Obesity Prevention, and it was going to be Girl Scouts and 4-H that we're working with them. And we're actually eating a better quality diet. Heart disease is down. We're eating too much food in terms of quantities of food, and definitely we know too many sugar-sweetened beverages. But we also have to move. The piece about physical activity at Pennington, they said this is the key, and they're actually working with kids to do more Texercise, get it, T-E-C-H, beyond the we. It's like more kinds of things just to get more communities with sidewalks and movement in America. To me, that is where there is hope. You don't have to tell a farmer to get more exercise, though, do you?
But in terms of so I think that's really important. It's like, don't eat so much, don't eat so sweet, and get off your butt and move around, which is not something we can take for granted sometimes. But in terms of where you see the future of food going, I mean, I was really interested in the foods that are good for us. Okay, red wine, we're going to have grapes, I'm going to have dark chocolate, I'm going to eat salmon 12 times a week. Where else do you see this? Is it going to be driven by health mostly? Is it going to be driven by smaller portions? Where do you think it's going?
Frank, I think, and this is going to be very difficult to communicate, meal patterns versus single nutrients. Like avoid this, avoid that, eat more of that. It's meal patterns.
That's that's where this is going.
That is going, and I know that
What does
sounds
that
boring,
mean?
and we've got to work on a sexier way to explain this to people. And the meal patterns is if you have, potatoes, they raise your glycemic index. Well, no, not eaten in the context of a meal. We're supposed to eat meals, and even a snack. It should be, like a protein, a vegetable, a whole grain kind of a thing together. So the meal pattern. So people, you can't demonize a certain food. It has to be the way people, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. And so that is our next challenge in nutrition is explaining, how to make a meal. And when 3% of people don't have a table, it's, and they're eating in their cars,
So how do you do that? As a journalist, how do you do that? Without finger wagging at them or lecturing.
Give good examples, I guess. People want to know. Just tell me what to eat and why. Just don't tell me too much about the why, because my eyes will start to glaze over. And I think that the food magazines do a fabulous job at doing this. All the women's health publications, the wonderful blogs all across the country are examples of recipes, examples of meals. And I'm not to get so home ec-y, but it really is all back to home ec.
Last year, I don't know if you all remember, but we talked some about millennials and how millennials are driving change. Where do you see the big changes in consumer trends coming from? Is it millennials? And how do you see it changing our food patterns?
You know, everybody always forgets about the huge population of people over age 60. And
baby boomers, they're back.
yeah, they're moving on into another category. But I know we keep
Say
talking about
it ain't
millennials,
so.
but I'm telling you, the aging of America, and in terms of, and I speak to a lot of senior groups too, and it's like, they're so smart and they know everything, and they're really.
So how are they changing their purpose?
They're like, some of them unfortunately are avoiding dairy now, they're avoiding gluten, they're also of course succumbing to all this too. So I don't think it's so much of a demographic in terms of ages, Frank. I really think it's a psychographic in terms of how people are responding in the different socioeconomic groups, education, and we know that people with the dollars vote more than people who aren't spending as much. But where are we going? I don't know. I see a bright future. I think people are. The supermarkets of America are fantastic. I don't think they've ever been better. So many of them, like Hy-Vee, for instance, has a dietitian at every single supermarket. There's many, many in all the different ones. But to go in there and see the variety of quality, nutritious, affordable foods in the American supermarket it's a learning laboratory. It really is. And so as I'm also a nerd when I travel, anybody go to supermarkets when they travel? Because it really, it's a reflection of people's lives.
No, it's really fascinating, and supermarkets have gone what we would have thought some time ago upscale, but they're offering incredible foods now. You can stop at the fresh food section on the highway now, at the little rest stops. You know, it's amazing.
And fresh, another thing, just to say too, communicating to people that processed foods, like frozen foods, it's nature's pause button. I mean, it's just as nutritious, sometimes more nutritious, and certainly canned products as well. And I'm really impressed with what what food companies are doing today. Some of them are ripe for reformulation, some products, but they're pretty smart. They'll do it.
Okay, so I want to talk to you in the last couple of minutes before we all go upstairs and eat.
Yeah, don't get in the way of this.
Okay,
anymore.
don't get in the way of food. How you've been very clever, and you've really made an amazing career out of this. The Slim Down South Cookbook, Eating Well, Living Healthy in the Land of Biscuits and Bacon. How you write, how you think, how you engage people, and go to where they are, onto their territory. I mean, this book is terrific. Farmer's Market Pasta Salad, I open randomly to that. Fried green tomato sliders. So it's making it fun, it's making it accessible. What's your secret?
Well, we were going to call the book Gone with the Girdle, but that got turned down, Southern Living. And then my friend said, why don't we call it Kiss My Skinny Grits? Well, that got turned down too. But it's Slim Down South. And I think that you want to give people, people say like, especially people up north, they go, Carolyn, healthy Southern, isn't that an oxymoron? And I said, no, this is where the farms are. This is where, it's an agrarian society. We're going to celebrate all these beautiful things. So again, bringing people to the table literally with foods that they want to eat and showing them how to make tweaks so that they're swap one ingredient for another to make it more healthful so that we can have a little bit of naughty and a lot of nice.
A little bit of naughty and a lot of nice. I think it's a great way, especially in New Orleans, to leave it. Thank you very, very much.
Frank.
It's great
Thank you.
to see you again, and it's great to see this. So, this has been, I think, a really engaging and thorough look behind the consumer psyche with some of the interesting facts that you brought. Carolyn and a variety of Bayer subject matter experts are going to be on hand to answer your questions on this and any other future shock type questions you may have, to think about how agriculture is adapting and innovating to meet needs globally and meet the consumer's changing tastes. But at this point in the evening, we're going to stop here. We'll resume in the morning at 7 a.m., as Darren reminded us, bright and early. But upstairs, If you head to the 8th floor to the Louis Armstrong Ballroom, cocktails, dinner will be served, an opportunity to mix and mingle with everybody who's here, with fellow guests, take advantage of opportunities to speak with people, the experts and people from Bayer, as well as Carolyn. As a reminder, just a quick reminder, we have one break in the program again tomorrow. You should make note of this. That's for your interviews, and it's an hour and a half post-event, so there will be a couple of opportunities there where you can connect with people and get material for your stories. We encourage you to make the most of tonight, to really enjoy it, to ensure you meet the people you want to meet. Please pack up your belongings, take care of them, and we'll see you on the 8th floor. Thank you all very much. Welcome to New Orleans. Welcome to